Should it be legal to patent pharmaceuticals? Drug development requires enormous upfront investment with no guarantee of success. A single medication can cost billions of dollars to bring to market, accounting for research, clinical trials, regulatory approval, and the vast majority of experimental drugs that never succeed, but whose costs nevertheless must be accounted for. Without patent protection, this entire system would collapse. Consider the economic reality facing pharmaceutical companies. Development costs are almost entirely fixed, the same whether a drug helps 1 patient or 1 million. Once a formula is discovered, manufacturing the actual pills costs relatively little, but discovering that formula requires years of research, extensive testing, and regulatory compliance that can exceed billions of dollars per approved drug. Here's where patents become essential. Without them, the moment a company releases a successful drug, competitors can simply copy the formula and manufacture identical products. These copycat producers face minimal fixed costs. They skip the research, the failed experiments, and the clinical trials. As a consequence, they can undercut the original developer's price dramatically while still turning a profit. The original company, meanwhile, must price its product to recover the billions of dollars in development costs. But if consumers can buy the identical drug elsewhere for half the price, they naturally will. This forces the innovator to actually match the lower price, making it impossible to recoup their investment. Facing guaranteed losses, no rational company would ever invest in drug development. When costs of innovation are concentrated on one party while the benefits are received by others, innovation ceases. The first company bears all the risk and expense while competitors reap the rewards. Drug patents solve this by granting temporary exclusivity to successful innovations. During that patent period, the developing company can charge prices that reflect their true costs, including the expense of failed projects. This creates the profit incentive necessary to justify massive upfront investments in uncertain ventures. Critics often focus on high drug prices during the patent period, but this misses the fundamental trade-off. Yes, prices are higher temporarily, but without patents, most of these drugs simply wouldn't exist. Patients would face the much higher price of pain, physical deterioration, or even death. If patients prefer the pain, suffering, or risk of death to the drugs available, I believe that they should be free to refuse to pay for them. But the fact that at least some, if not most people, choose to pay for the drugs tells us that they find the relief or benefits from the drugs more valuable than the cost they pay to receive them. The same principle extends beyond pharmaceuticals, by the way. The need for at least temporary patent protection applies to medical devices, prosthetics, and diagnostic equipment. Any medical technology requiring a substantial upfront investment faces similar economics. High fixed costs without patent protection results in no innovation. Whether it's an artificial heart, a surgical robot, or a diagnostic machine, developers need some period of exclusivity to justify their initial investment. Some argue that government funding could replace private pharmaceutical research, but government agencies face the same economic constraints. They still must pay for research, testing, and the cost of failure. More importantly, they lack the profit incentives that drive efficient resource allocation and risk-taking in competitive markets. There's also the problem of a lack of price signals. If the government is giving the drugs away for free, then there is no price signal to tell them which illnesses are in most need of new drugs. In a free market, the fact there are 1 million people with disease X who would pay $100 a month for a drug that alleviates or reduces their symptoms tells companies that they should prioritize drugs for that disease over a drug for the disease Y, affecting 2 million people who would only pay $10 a month, presumably because their illness is not as painful or they are not as desperate for a treatment. However, in a government-run system, politicians may see 2 million voters as opposed to 1 million voters and misallocate funds to experiments on a drug that is less urgently needed than other alternatives. The patent system already balances innovation incentives with public access through its limited duration. Patents eventually expire, allowing generic competition that drives down prices dramatically. This provides both the initial incentive for innovation and eventual broad access to successful treatments. While debates about what duration is appropriate for patents on drugs can be had in good faith by well-intentioned people, ending patent protection altogether would be disastrous for those currently suffering from diseases that desperately need new medicines. Without drug patents, we'd face a world where most medical breakthroughs never happen. The entrepreneurs and companies capable of funding billion-dollar research projects would redirect their capital elsewhere toward industries where they can actually profit from successful innovations. If you enjoyed this video, check the description for ways that you can support me and consider sharing this video with a friend.